whakarongo ki te tangi a te korimako. Kōrero flowing out the hook of force. Kaupapa relevant, kaupapa out of bounds, kaupapa exigent, kaupapa paramount. Nā ko nā whakapiri mai ki te kaupapa tino whakahira hira whakarongo pi kari kari mai. Hare hare mai, o Taringa hare hare mai. We gotta gather up close everybody. Gather up close everybody. Kani move that body. Kani move that body.
Tui i runga tui e raro karongo te pō, karongo te ao i te kōrero i te wānanga, kei te wānanga te ao, kei te wānanga te pō, kei te wānanga taringa. Anei e mihi atu nei, ngai taringa o tira, i ngā mea hou kua piri mai ki te punua pā o taringa tēnei, te mihi ake te whakamānawa ki kia koutou. Nau mai, haere mai, coming at you, well I am from the bustling metropolis of Taumatu, in my office/library/ put books / put things there. Ngā huia wants to put out of the way. Nau mai hoki mai, morena te tuahine, Erica.
Morena, and I'm coming at you from the foggy haven of Kirikiriroa.
Foggy haven, I like that. It's a bit, actually no, the mist is cleared here, and me te waimari o tērā, i nā hoki kua taimai a tāua manuhiri i te rānei. Erica, no reira tēnei te huri ake te mihi kia kōrua, Pita kōrua ko te Matahiapo tēnā kōrua. Nau mai ane ki te punua pāho o Taringa. Lovely to have you both here with us.
Nau mai.
Morena rā.
Kia ora.
Morena. Now I'm going to throw it over to you two for a little bit. Kia kōrero mai kōrua, kōwai kōrua, nōwhea kōrua, which will give our listeners, ngai Taringa, all 50,000 of them, no pressure, an idea of where you're from. So kei a koe te tuatahi taku rangatira. Pita, kei a koe.
Morena tātou, ko pera Meihana tōku ingoa a hiuri a hau a Rangitāne, Ngati Koe, Ngati Apa, me ngai tauhu hoki. I te puaki a hau ki Wairau, kei raro i te korowai o te tapawai, te maunga tapawai o Uanuku. And I'm here in Wairau, Blenheim, and it's a little bit misty as well down here. Looking out my office window, it's pretty cloudy, but nice to be here.
Ka pai.
Tēnā koe.
Kia ora rā. E te iwi whānui, a Matahiapo taku ingoa, te pu mai ai a hau I konei te whanganui a tara, te whanganō tāua tūpuna. Ai, tauira au ki te herenga waka, Meihana I te reo Māori, me te turu Pākehā. Ai, te pu mai au I konei Rangitāne taku iwi matua, I konei te Wairarapa hoki, engari oku here ngā, ki rano iwi Ngāti Koe, Ngāti Apa, Ngāi Tahu, Ngāti Kahungunu, Ngāti Maniapoto, Ngāti Kahu I te nota. Penei a tata katohi nui ngā here-herenga. Engari ai. Koe tēnā.
Ka pai.
Ka pai, tēnā rau atu korua.
E nui ngā here-here.
Ai, but we heard te mea e tūhonohono ana I a kōrua.
Te mea matua.
Ai, ana ko tō kōrua iwi anei ko Rangitāne. Nō reira, e mihi ake ana, so that's it, e te iwi o te wiki. Rangitāne, engari, I think the Rangitāne kōrero is definitely going to bring up the origins of Rangitāne, but also ko te Rangitāne ka kōrero tia I te rānei ko Rangitāne ki Wairau.
Yeah.
Is it Rangitāne ki Wairau or Rangitāne ki te Wairau?
E rua. I te mea, ko ngā whakapapa ka kōrero hia ko Rangitāne o te Waipounamu whānui. So te takiwā no mātou o roto I te Waipounamu, timatawa I te ana māhanga I te top of te Marlborough Sounds, ka heke ki Waiotoa ki te Clarence, ka whiti ki Kaparate Hau ki Lake Grassmere, ka whiti ki Whakatū ki Nelson, ka whiti ki Tōtara Nui, roto te Marlborough Sounds, ka whiti ki roto te Whanganui o Port Underwood, ka whiti ki roto Kaituna, and then ka whiti whakamutunga mai ki roto Wairau. So te takiwā, he nui atu I te Wairau, engari tērā no tetahi kaupapa e āta kōrero hi ana tō mātou, e tō mātou iwi.
Cool! Well, ka mahi e te uri o Rangitāne. There's our segue into te kiwaha. Ka mahi. What do you think that means, Erica, when I say ka mahi e te uri o Rangitāne?
Wow, I'm just going to take a stab in the dark here.
You go, girl.
And I think it's going to be like, we're going to get into it.
Ooh, I like that you just took a stab. Ka rawe. Well, tēnei kiwaha e te iwi, a ka mahi, he kiwaha kua ngaro I roto I te kōrero o te iara. So this is a kiwaha that's defunct, I guess. We don't use it like our tūpuna used to use it profusely, and many examples of it are in whakatauki. So guess what? Right here, right now, I've got ngā pepeha a ngā tīpuna.
Nice.
Look, I said tīpuna, but you'll know, ko taku mita ko te tūpuna, but because that's the title of the book, that's what I'm going to say, by Distinguished Hirini Moko Mead. Oh, sir, I should say. Now, do you say sir, doctor, sir, professor, or professor, sir?
I think it's Sir first.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Sir Dr. Hirini Mead and Neil Grove. And I'm just going to read off a few of these whakatauki. So, we've got, ka mahi te hopu a te ringa whiro. Good on the chiefly hand that takes hold. Ka mahi te kanuhi kai mātārai. Well done, the eye that watches the headland. Ka pai. In this instance, I said ka mahi te uri o Rangitāne. Ne? So what do you think means then, Erica? Now you've got a bit of an idea of the use of that ka mahi.
Well done.
Yes!
Okay.
Well done.
Well done, the descendants of Rangitāne.
Koina, ka mahi te uri, ngā uri rānei o Rangitāne. And koina, and you can use this, like you can say, ka mahi e te tamaiti pai.
Oh, cool.
Good on you, good boy. Ne? Ka mahi e ngā tohunga o te manaaki. Ka pai. Anyone can use this. It's not peculiar to any particular iwi, like some of the kiwaha we've shared on Taringa. And what I really like, it's one that we can revive.
Cool.
So here we go. Ka mahi.
Ka mahi paraone.
I'll let that one go, Erica. We're having a shot. Hoi anō e te iwi koera te kiwaha o te Wiki, engari kia huri anei ki te kaupapa matua o te rā iwi o te Wiki, episode 244.
Yeah.
Our last one before we come up to our birthday, the birthday of Taringa, which is
5th birthday.
which we recognise during Matariki. But karewe kōrero nui mō tērā i te mea he punua pāho anō mō tērā, ka waiho tērā ki te taha. Anei, o tātou rangatira e te iwi o Rangitāne kua tai mai i te ata nei, nō reira e mihi tonu ana kia kōrua. Now, you got straight into it. That's why I said, te Matahiapo, ka mahi te uri o Rangitāne, and I saw tō huanga Peter e Nohan, and he was nodding. And I think that's a great place to start, actually, where you started with e kōrero ana mō te rohe e kōrero tia nei, the specific rohe of Rangitāne.
Yeah, I probably maybe jumped the gun a bit there because ki hae au I kōrero mō te mō Rangitāne I mua I tō rātou tainga mai ki roto te takiwā. So, whātonga I whai a toi te huatahi mai Hawaii ki Aotearoa nei. I roto I te waka kura haupo. Ka tau ki tonga pōrutu I te tau hauauru. Ka tai ki whakatāne. Ka kite a toi kona. Nā wai ka hunuku ki nuku taurua. Ka noho rātou ki nuku taurua. Ko nā whātonga rako tu waipara ka puta ko tara. Te whanganui a tara, taua tarana. Whātonga ka moia reretua ka puta ko tautoki. Ka moia tautoki I a waipuna te mokopuna. Nā kupe, ka puta ko Rangitāne. So, koena te honohononga o ngā iwi o ngai tara muaupoko me Rangitāne. So, ka heke rātou mai nuku taurua ki te whanganui a tara nei. I ki ai rātou ko te ponga ihu o te motu. Nā wai ka noho mai rātou I konei. So, ka noho pū rātou I here taunga. I roto I ngā whakareanga ka heke ki roto tamaki nui a rua. Ka heke tonu ki Manawatū. Ka heke ki roto Wairarapa. Nā, he wā tōna I noho ai a Rangitāne mai here taunga ki tamaki nui a rua. Wairarapa, Manawatū, te rātu taha o tararua pai maunga. Heke rawa mai ki te tauihu o te waka. So, tēnā te tapere nui a Rangitāne. Ngā peka katoa Rangitāne. Nā, ka heke mai, he nui ngā hekenga mai a ngā tipuna. And Pete, full on, correct me if I'm wrong. But te huataki tētahi wā mātou rangatira nui, tuatahi pea I heke mai. E ai ki ngā kōrero I te hi Cape Palace rā. Kātahi tētahi haunui ka pupuhi ake nā ka tautana waka ki roto te ana māhanga ki roto Port Gore. Ka tautana waka ki kona kātahia ka mātai I te whenua. Ka haere, ka hiko, haere, ka tōtō I tana waka, ka tai ki tōtara nui, ka tai ki wairau, ka tai ki kapra te hau. Kātahi ia ka hoki ki te ika māu, mea te tāna iwi. Kata nahai ka kite I tētahi takiwa, mērtunga kema nao te atahua, mērtunga kema o te pai, hika mā, kia haere tātou. Nā reira, ka karite tana iwi kia heke mai. E te hao no tangata I roto I au heke. E te hao no heke ko te whakamana, ko te rerewa, ko tana taina ko hāpairangi, ko tū kauai te hao no rangatira o ngā heke. And then I te tai hauāuru, e rā noitahi rangatira te heiwi, te kahawai a te āhuru hoki I heke mai I ngā rangitāne o te tai hauāuru.
I suppose we should also mention too that when Te Huataki came over with those other rangatira, obviously they weren't entering an empty land. There were already people here.
Oh.
And so there'd been people here since Waido Bar had been settled from East Polynesia, but there were also earlier Kurahopo people who had come over as well. So people moved from the north because there were iwi more bigger and more powerful sort of pushing down. So Tūmata Kōkiri, who was another descendant of Whātunga, his people came across and stopped in at Meritoto for a while and then made their way across to Rangitoto and to Whakatū. And they're our tupuna as well. So they were the ones who met Tasman in 1642. So so we were the original Dutch busters. And their journey across Te Tauihu was remembered in the taunahanaha whenua of the Marlborough Sound. So places like Nuku Waiata is a Tūmata Kōkiri ancestor. There's a lake on Rangitoto called Muawhatu, who's another ancestor. There's an island at the bottom of Rangitoto, and that's Hautai, who's another ancestor. So that migration of people have been remembered in the histories as well. They were kind of followed by Ngāti Mamui. And if you guys ever come to Waido, if you're standing in Blenheim and you look to the north, many of those hills and bays and islets that run north into Cloudy Bay, into Kokoakupe, they all carry the names of Ngāti Mamui ancestors who, when our Rangitāne ancestors came, that's who they met and that's who they married. Mamui then was followed by Ngaitara, who already been mentioned, one of Whātunga's children. And we had little arguments with our cousins, with our relations, who in the end became us. And so there were stories of battles and marriages right through the Marlborough Sound. So when we say our rohi stretches over into Whakatū, that's because that's where our whakapapa takes us. And we shared those areas with our other Kurahopo relatives as well. And I suppose heading down the east coast as well, we had relationships with our Ngāti Kuri and Ngaitahu cousins down that way as well. And that's why Huataki is so important, because his marriages to the daughters of Tio, that's what connects us to those people going down the east coast.
Just a pātai, is that tupuna te Huataki, koinei te ingoa o te Huataki Whareaitu, is that who he's named after? Or is he... Sorry, I was just random pātai, I'm just thinking, because I hear that name, I'm thinking of Huataki.
I'm not sure.
Because I know he's Ngāti Kuia as well, so there's a...
So he's a McGregor, obviously, so he's a descendant of Tute Paurangi. So that line of descent there is a Ngāti Whakamana, which we've just talked about as well. So that's another one of those migrating chiefs that sort of came over here in the 1500s.
I really loved all the kōrero, engari kua puta mai e tai kōrero mo Kurahopo from some of our other kai kōrero we've had on mo te iwi o te wiki. And there's sort of two parts, well, layers, I guess, e pāna ki te waka o Kurahopo, te wā I a whātonga, and then te wā I etahi atu o ngā tūpuna, ne?
Koe nui ngā kōrero. Ko rangona e au mō tēnei waka o Kurahopo, o tira mō te nui o ngā rangatira I noho hei kai tātaki I te waka. And kare au I te mea te au ko mātou e tika ana ko rātou e he ana. E whakaroke ana hau, ko tēnā pea, he wā tōna, ko tēnei tangata, te rangatira o te waka. Nā wai roto I ngā tau, tako hātu te waka, ki te rātu rangatira. And then ka waiho mai, nāna te waka. And then I haere I hoki te waka ki Hawaiki, and then kātahi, ka haere mai anō ki te whenua nei, and then ka tāko hātu ki te teha no tangata. And then ko te teha no tangata te rangatira o te waka. Kua nui ngā kōrero ko rongo mō pōhurihanga, ko rongo mō ruatea, ko rongo mō te maunga roa tetahi anō. Nā reira, kua nui ngā kōrero mo te waka nei. En ko hau mea na ko te katoa e tika ana.
Pewhio whakaro Pete te ngā kōrero mō Kurahaupo. I find it really interesting.
When I first started out on my journey, finding out about iwi history, whakapapa, and our oral traditions, the first book I got a hold of was Jock McEwen's Rangitāne, A Tribal History, and I really liked it. Unfortunately, he didn't touch on us in the south, so it kind of ended. And then up at our whare tupuna up here at Omaka Marae, that whare holds the kōrero of Kurahaupo as well. So I know what the other kōrero are, but for me, I can only really go with what's been carved into the house. And it's actually quite similar to what our Rangitāne and Wairarapa say as well. Whātonga lands at Nuku Taurua and his descendants, as we've already talked about. So that's written into our whare tupuna. So.
Kia ora. Yeah, I feel I missed out a whole because taku mōhio tuatahi ki a Rangitāne iwi nei. I tonoa au, tērā te wā i noho ai au hei kaitito mā te kapahaka o Wakahuia. Way back, it was, a while ago. And I composed their pātere for te matatini I tū ki te papai oia. And if I can recall...
Was that 2007?
2005.
Oh, yeah. I went to that one.
Yeah. I remember the first verse, tēnei te hiki ake I taku taka paupōkai ki a wake taku haere katoreti ahaha I ngā pare ngā o te rangitikei e tia rā ko te tapu ai tahi o Rangitāne nui a rangi nā wai hoki koe nā toi te huatahi koe nā rongo e roa koe nā whātonga e nā tautoki e kahi hiko ki waho rā tamai a hua tamai whakaputa ki te ao pakakina ko te tini whetū kei runga kokoe ki te mata o te whenua e rangi e. Wow!
Wow!
Pai tēnā.
Ai, engari, no muri mai ka ako au heka he ara no tētahi wehenga, e harai te wehenga, tētai wāhanga o Rangitāne, ana kei te tauihu o te waka, and I feel that I could have and I should add another verse to that pātere.
No mai.
Yeah.
No mai.
And of course, taku haere ki te hui o te kaiaotanga. That's what I was thinking. I was actually going to do that pātere while I was down there. But I thought, because I was missing the link with koutou o te tauihu, ahako e whānei ko tahi, I thought, no, I'm not going to do that because there wasn't a verse in there for the tauihu. Anyway, this isn't about me.
It is quite cool though, because one of our kaumātua, Richard Bradley, he went to the launch of that book, Rangitāne, A Tribal History, and he travelled up with a ropu from down home, and he said to Jock McEwen, hey, well, you've missed us out. And apparently Jock said, well, that's for someone else to do, so it could be a cool opportunity.
Kia ora, kia ora. Nō reira e kai aku rangatira whakaro nei au, kua kōrero tia te ahunga mai o Rangitāne and how koe anō te tupuna I puhia e te hau.
Huataki.
Ko huataki tonu, kia ora. And then, karo nei, when you got straight into it safari, te Matahiapo, mo taku he pai te whakahuahua anō I e rā wāhi kōrero tia rā e koe, hei kōrero mai mā kōrua ki te iwi. E rā wāhi kōrero rā koe, the borders of Rangitāne and te tauihu.
I think over the last 20 years, a couple of things kind of stand out for our community down here. I think one of them was a settlement of a treaty claim. So te tauihu claims were heard 2000, 2004. Another really significant event, I think, was the repatriation of koiwi tangata that were excavated against the wishes of our kaumātua during the mid-20th century. And so the leadership of the iwi at the time, I think, took the opportunity whilst the treaty claim was happening to kind of place a little bit of pressure on the people who held those koiwi tangata down at Canterbury Museum. And so the iwi was able to achieve a repatriation of those koiwi tangata in 2009. In the process of the repatriation, the iwi were able to relive and rehear some of those stories about how our people were treated in the 1940s. So one of our uncles, Horowhenua Peter MacDonald, he's kind of the name we most associate with our protest movement back in the 1940s. He was a really interesting guy. He was a whakapapa exponent, and he was a historian, and he was also an activist as well. And so when he found out that koiwi were being excavated and taken down to Canterbury Museum, he started to protest, and he marched down to the Waido Bar just out of Blenheim here. But the police, he tried to get Waido Bar turned into a cemetery. He wrote articles in the local Marlborough Express which challenged the views of the intellectual community at the time about how Aotearoa was settled. So Peter was told that the people who were at the Waido Bar were not his people. They were an earlier people. And because one of the ideas at the time was that present-day Māori belonged to the fleet. And so the fleet had come after these earlier arrivals. And, of course, these fleet Māori then killed and took over the land of these first peoples. And so Peter challenged that view. As far as he was concerned, those people were our people. Mm-hmm. And so years later, when the opportunity came to have those koiwi returned, the quid pro quo, if that's the right phrase, for having those koiwi returned was that the koiwi would have macroscopic and microscopic analysis done on the koiwi. So macroscopic is what the bones and joints look like. Microscopic are like DNA and isotope testing and all that kind of thing. So what came out of that research was that those people who were excavated, they belonged to the same family or the same blood haplogroup as present-day Māori.
Oh, yeah.
And so when, in 2016, Rangitāne or Waido hosted New Zealand Archaeological Association conference here, one of the things that we were invited to do was to participate in this thing called From Africa to Aotearoa project, which Lisa Matahiapo-Smith was conducting out of Otago University. And so many of our aunties and sisters and female cousins took part in that. And what was discovered was that many of our whanaunga, our female whanaunga, belonged to the same blood haplogroup as those people buried at Waido Bar.
There you have it.
Peter MacDonald was saying what we already knew, but the science kind of said, well, these are our people as well. So I suppose for Rangitāne, we kind of see our origins as being origins that originate in the Kurahopo waka from the north, but we also see our origins as coming from those first people who settled in Waido, and people have been there ever since.
And if you go on Google, whānau, and you go Waido Bar taonga, you will see the taonga that were dug up along with the bones. And they are taonga like you've never seen. They are distinctly Polynesian. They use moor bones, they use shark bones, they use dolphin bones, they use different types of stones that you've never seen before. And they understood that some of these people must have come from Eastern Polynesia because there was a certain taonga, it was a chalet, Pete.
Yeah.
It was a shell that did not originate in this country, that is just not from here. It was from the Marquesas, eh?
I think so, yeah. It's a drill bit.
Yeah. That was the tohu that people had come from another place. And then, of course, from there across to all of our different... I think Uncle Richard calls this place the Vatican City of Rangitāne, this whole area, because the Waido Bar, including the lagoons as well. So I don't know if it was in the 1600s or whatever, but there was Pātitiwai and Te Whatakoiro, tupuna of ours of Rangitāne, who started creating these canals, hand-dug canals with the traditional core. And you know when we talk about our tupuna, which are so smart, tino mutinga ke mana te koi te Māori, these were our tupuna who dug these canals in all of these different intricate, crazy ways so that they had to do the least amount of work possible, so that the tide would come in, it would fill up with all of these kai, and then they'd put their traps down, the tide would go out, the fish would be caught by the traps, and then you just pick them up.
Ingenuity at its finest.
Yeah, and koenei koro nei mo te koia te Māori. But those lagoons, plus Te Pokohiwi o Kupe. That surrounding area was a huge area of importance and still is for our people.
Koira te Pokohiwi o Kupe?
Yeah, Te Pokohiwi is that bar, that strip there, and then the Wairau Lagoons is just Te Wai o Roto.
So you've given us a bit of a window into the Vatican. Now let's talk about the empire of Rangitāne in the south, in Te Tauihu.
I've started referring to Tuamatene as the kohanga of the iwi. That's just me personally, but that's because that's where I sort of see, our iwi starting to invest a lot more, and that's a place where I was told by my Uncle Jeff that because our awa, Wairau, it used to flood a lot. And so my great-grandmother, along with lots of her whānau, ended up moving to Grovetown or Tuamatene. And then from that time, it had been a sort of, I don't know if empire is the right word, but a big community of particularly McDonald's, but of Rangitāne living in the Wairau. And Tuamatene was a place where our rangatira I haia kai kaura in the 1800s. There were some Pākehā chopping down some timber there, and they weren't doing it with his kari whakai. He didn't tell them they could do that. And they weren't prepared near to give him any money for the timber, and so he accosted them.
So he's an interesting guy, Ihaya Kaikoura. So he was the only Rangitāne Kurahopo person to sign Te Tiriti o Waitangi down here in 17 June 1840. So once all the treaty signings had taken place up north, the Crown took the documents around the South Island, and the last stop was here in Port Underwood, just around the bay. So there was 9 treaty signatories, and Ihaya was the Rangitāne signatory. Yeah, he was an interesting guy because our people had been, during the Muscat War period, invaded by people from the north. And in those conflicts, we obviously came out second best. But Ihaya was one of those men who read the times and saw that things were changing and was able to adapt, I believe. And so within the short period of time from the arrival of Muscat people to the signing of the treaty, he had regained enough mana and authority to sign the treaty, but he was also referred to as the leader of that Port Underwood community, which was a mixed community, interestingly enough. So he obviously was an influential person, and he also was a repository of our whakapapa and traditions. So he spent a lot of time with tribal scribes recording whakapapa and traditions, which really useful for us in the present because we get to rebuild based on what these people said and were doing in the 1800s. So I just thought I'd capture Ihaya Kaikoura because he is an important guy.
And to actually segue from Port Underwood, there's a couple of kōrero that come to mind. And the first one is about Raukawa, the moana, and te takinga mai o tau ingoa e ake a mātou. So e ake a mātou I whai a kupe I a te wheke a muturangi ki te moana nei. Ka patua te wheke, ka mate, ka tīkina ake ngā whatu o taua whekera, ka whiu ake ko the Brothers Islands. If you search up the Brothers Islands, don't go, I don't even call it a witipu, but But we were told that the eyes of the wheke were thrown and they became the Brothers Islands. E ne ake a mātou, he tino tapu e nei whatu. I a mātou tupuna e whakawhiti ana I te moana, mai I te ika amau ki te Waipounamu, ka mau tīpare kawakawa rātou. Ka mau tīpare kawakawa rātou, ke kawa rātou e kite I ngā whatu. Those islands were called ngā whatu, obviously, because they're the whatu of the Te Wheke Amuturangi. But those whatu, those islands were so tapu to our people that they didn't look at them and they instead were tīpare kawakawa till they were passed out. The only person who I've ever read in manuscripts to look at them was Tā Mairangi. Tā Mairangi, Ariki Ta Pairu, I think Te Koti likened her to Hine Matioro in one of his more tiatia, but she was big Queen Ariki Te Pairu and only she was of sufficient mana to be able to tiruake ki ngā whatu. And so yeah, koina te takinga mai te ingoa, Raukawa. Lots of people say Raukawa moana, Raukawa kawa, but in terms of kōrero tuku iho and what I've seen in manuscripts, all I've seen is Raukawa, finished there. And then the other kōrero that come up in my mind was Pukatea in Te Ano Rongo Mai Papa. So this was a Ngāti Māmoe kōrero. These were our Ngāti Māmoe tūpuna, because they are still our tūpuna. We had a ngārara huarau, big scary taniwha mea. And nā tuiti tēnei kōrero nā te tūpuna tātere, tēnei tāna tupuna, Tweety, there was this ngārara huarau wreaking havoc. I think he likened it to a great giant lizard scary thingy. And it was wreaking havoc amongst the people. And so the rangatira rongo mai papa and his tamaiti rangiātea decided they were going to do something about it. They lured the ngārara huarau out of its cave, and they had one of them sitting on top of the cave ready to give it a twick. And so they did. And so they lured him out, and then one of them come down and give him a twick over the head, and then they beat him up and ended up killing him. And then all of the rawa that he had eaten of the tribe, all of the taonga, all of the people started coming out of his guts. But yeah, that's another kōrero about the ngārara huarau from the Pukatea Whites Bay area.
Gather up close, everybody.
I've had Pukatea, Tua Mātene, Te Pokohiwi o Kupe. You know, I'm trying to imagine, and Tua Mātene I didn't know was Grovetown. There you go, Te iwi, Grovetown. You know, I can sort of imagine the places that Rangitāne is in Te Ika Māui. I'm trying to think, like, if I can get an imaginary map I taku hinengaro, so our listeners can sort of envision where Rangitāne sits in te tauihu o te waka, because there's a lot going on in te tauihu.
Yeah. So yeah, probably start with Port Gore at the top. And if you reckon wrong, Pete, just say, so if you look on your Te Ana Mahanga.
Te Ana Mahanga.
Ana Mahanga was where Huataki first arrived when he got blown across, and he was given a wife. Her name was Wharipuka. And so that kind of established the connection, or a stronger connection, between the people Kurahopo in the south and Kurahopo in the north.
And then coming left across Rangitoto on your map, and then coming down across to about Whakatū, come inland to the lakes, to Rotoiti and Rotorua.
Wow.
That was Kaituna plus the lakes were in the upper Wairau were a big refuge for our people during the musket raids. So our people were getting attacked along, you know, all of these coastal communities. And so our people, they moved to the back. They sought refuge in the hinterland. So the lakes, and then you keep going around. Well, there's just a whole lot of mountains really till you get up to the Clarence River or Waioto on the east, which is north of Kaikoura, to our Pa Matariki up there. And then you hit the sea and you keep coming right up till you get to Karaka on the right. That's the easternmost point. And then just to its left is Lake Grasmere, or Kaipara Te Hau.
Kaipara Te Hau.
If you want to talk about that, about Te Hau and the gardens and Kupe.
So in our kōrero, when Kupe arrived, there were already people living here. And so the chief of those people was a guy by the name of Te Hau, and he's reputed to have introduced kumara cultivation into the area. And so he and Kupe had altercations. Te Hau tried to prevent Kupe from travelling down the east coast. He put obstacles in front of Kupe, and Kupe responded by causing tidal waves, which came in and washed out Te Hau's kumara gardens at Kapara Te Hau there, Kapara Te Hau. Kupe then returns back north and makes his way back up the west coast. And so the stretch of coastline, as we know from 2016 with the Kaikoura earthquakes, has over a period of time had earthquakes and tsunami inundations come into the area. So we're really familiar with those natural occurrences because they've been recorded in our oral traditions.
And then from Lake Grasmere, from Kaipara Te Hau, we come into the Wairau, or the Tūranga Waiwai of the iwi. You know, we're known as Rangitāne or Wairau. So that is where we are most concentrated.
Only just, because we have big communities of Rangitāne or Wairau up in Levin and Horowhenua as well.
And then you come just from Wairau through to Port Underwood, and then keep coming left around into Tōtaranui, where our people met Cook and Russians. So our people traded with Russians, our Kurahopo people in the 1820s. So there was firstly the Captain Cook voyages, and our people had interactions, some altercations with some of Cook's people and the Europeans that came then. But later on, our people met Russians.
Wow.
Who, as far as I was aware, and what I've read, it was a joyous time. There was all happy trading, no darus. And
Bit of vodka.
we have a lot of taonga over in Russia.
Yeah.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, we traded. And see, that's the amazing thing for our people is because we've lost so much as a result of musket wars and European diseases and colonization, we don't have a lot. But over in Russia, there's this whole store of, I think, hundreds of taonga that we happily traded and gave over to them. It's funny, that there were times where we were like, sure, random, go and have a kaitaka for a little broken nail. Sure, go and have a kahukiwi and a great big taiaha for a dumb bottle cap. It's buzzy that we had those times because of where we are now. We look back and go, gosh, we gave these things away so easily. But that's a cool little fun fact about our people as we traded with Russians.
Wow.
The people who met Cook were a mixed community because as Meritoto and Taringa was Arapawa Island was like Grand Central Station if you were moving north or south. That's where you that's kind of where you arrived and where you left.
Yeah.
And so the people who met Cook were our people and they were from both sides of the water. So Kahura's an interesting guy. So he was the guy who was reputed to have been responsible for the killing of those 10 men at Horowhenua Bay. And we came and went from that area depending on what the season was. But very quickly when Cook turns up, our people raced out there to trade. So the first sort of encounter kind of weren't sure what was happening, but by the time we got back, we were ready to trade. I think that's another kind of part of our makeup as well. You know, we lived in those areas where people came and went, and so we were always ready for exchange.
Hi.
Just looking at all your rohe, you guys are like half of the top of the south. Isn't there 8 iwi in Te Tauihu?
We're going there, guys.
So one of our aunties, actually our co-chair's grandmother, Auntie Shirley McDonald, she told me very early on that you can walk from this side of the island to that side of the island unencumbered. And she said because that's where your people were from. And so for Rangitāne, and I think for Ngāti Kuia and Apa as well, because we have shared whakapapa, we see both sides and the middle as being areas that were traversed by our ancestors. It was just really the musket wars, I think, but also the Crown, when it arrived, and it purchased areas and then set up native reserves. We were pushed onto these native reserves, which restricted our movements, which in traditional time we had no restrictions.
Yeah.
We could move across the top of the island. And so we still see all of these places as places that we have connections and associations with. So whether or not other people see it that way, I don't care.
Nei, he rawe tēnā kōrero. Yeah, because te mutingiho e tū ana kōrua koutou ki runga i raro i ngā kōrero a o koutou mātua tūpuna, nō reira koia tērā. Ne,
Yeah.
and e whakaaro nui anau ki tērā. Yeah, nō reira e mihi ake ana. I think it's just really, you know, Pete, when you and I met in that room, I just think it's really important. Taringa is an opportunity for us to share kōrero. And we get lots of messages from our listeners. I didn't know that. Or people that could be rangitāne. And this is a touchstone for them and can invigorate or encourage them to get in touch with their iwi and connect and learn. And for others just to know about rangitāne, I find that's important.
Yeah, well, the thing I find with rangitāne is because we were treated so poorly by the Crown and because they put us onto such small reserves, that when our people started to have more and more children, these reserves couldn't support our people. And that was actually what was promised. And so what ended up happening was people left. And so, you know, predominantly people moved north, people moved and later moved overseas. But that goes back to those times when we weren't given what we were promised and what we were entitled to. So if you talk to people like Richard Bradley and Judith McDonald and those people involved in the claims, they talk about the 20 square mile reserve, 2 miles inland from the mouth of the Wairarapa River, 10 miles up the coast, up into Port Underwood, and 2 miles inland. That should have been enough land for our people to get a start in the new settler colonial society. What they gave us was a reserve down at the Wairarapa, which was about 700 acres, divided amongst 3 iwi. And then, as the good folks here in Marlborough started to put in their waterworks to make their farms productive so that their families could do well, those waterworks then channeled all of the floodwater down into Wairarapa. And you have people alive today who are kaumātua now who will remember those floods because they took out their homes. Yeah, so it's the sad side of it, but it's all part of our history.
Kia ora. In Rangitāne, I got the sense of being in an interesting space in this revival, cultural revival of te reo. I guess te hāpai e te rangitānetanga is what I felt at the hui, even though it was run alongside with Ngāti Apa. I felt this, I felt that energy I roto I a koutou. You at this place, I guess, e whakahihiri ana I ngā whakatupuranga kei te haere ake.
And that's koina te tūmanako, is ka whakatahuri mai te iwi ki te whakaako I ene koro kia rātou. E pai ai tō rātou kauhau I te rongo pai rangitāne kia wai rane. Koina te mahi nui kia whakatahuri mai te iwi, kia rongo I te reka o ngā kōrero, kia hoki mai ki te hāpai, te taha ki te marae, ki ngā kōrero, ki ngā kaupapa. That's the big thing we're trying to, is inspire our people to come back, learn these kōrero, and help, and any of our kaupapa, help run kaupapa, help revitalise as much as possible. We've had it done quite hard, but we're not going to get anywhere by sitting here just saying that over and over again. So we do what we can with who we've got, with whoever's keen, and try and do as much as possible.
Kia ora. How kōrero whakahihiri I te iwi? There'll be Rangitāne listening to this. What are both of your dreams and aspirations for your people? I
mean, I've got lots of dreams, but if I was talking about what kōrero I would say to people to try and get them to come home, I'd say there's not a lot of us. There is not a lot of us in terms of our iwi compared to other iwi. And what I mean by that is population-wise. For example, one of our hapu Ngāti Huataki has a very small number of families, very, very small number of families, the McDonald's of which is a big one. But after that, if you were to take out the McDonald's, then that hapu would be close to becoming extinct. So there's not a lot of us in terms of even families to be able to take up this work. We can't rely on lots of other people to be able to do the work. And so we need as many people as possible because there just simply isn't enough of us. I think I was talking to my Uncle Mark one time who spoke about how small the number of people that are alive today are descendants from people who lived in the 1800s because so many people just died out. So many lines just died out, whether it was from influenza that killed out whole communities like in Ruakanakana, whether it was just people, lots of rangatira who were petitioning the Crown just didn't have uri, and their lines just died out, which has resulted, like I said, and there's no descendants of those people, and there's only this small group of whoever's left, which is us. And so it's up to us to do it. Otherwise, our iwi's gone. Our iwi's gone, our kōrero's gone, and we'll have nothing if we don't pick it up.
I like to reflect on what Richard Bradley says, and one of his favourite sayings is, there is unfinished business. And every time we in the Runanga take on a new kaupapa, it's like, this is some of the unfinished business. So we take a crew of people down to Canterbury Museum, regularly, our young folks. And that's to make sure that they know that Canterbury Museum has taonga that belongs in the Waido. Now, they need to be told that. We don't know when it's going to happen, but it needs to happen because that is the unfinished business. But we've got unfinished business all over the place. And I kind of take that as motivation. The former administration, they picked up the settlement and they settled the claim. So that's some of the unfinished business. But there's other stuff too. Te kaiotanga, that's some of the unfinished business. That needs to carry on because it should become part of the regular calendar of Rangitāne because we're there because of some unfinished business.
And maybe sometimes what might inspire people to come back and help is hearing what other people say about our iwi. So, you know, we talked about it before about the musket wars and about how our people were invaded and were hit by muskets and we didn't have any. And one of those common kōrero is that we were an enslaved people, that we had no mana, we had nothing, we were nothing, that they were ultimate mana whakahirahira and we were nothing. And then I think of the kōrero from Meihana Kireopa where he stood up in the native land court and said, my father was never captured and made a slave and nor was I. And that's just one of those kōrero that always rings in my mind to remind our people, like you said, we've got unfinished business. We've got work to do to remind these iwi that no, ko nei tonu mātou. We are still here. You know, I think Pete, you once said this to me, was that you will never be able to remove Rangitāne. You won't be able to go at them and battle them and push them down, but we have been here long before we will be here far after, a constant presence within our takiwā.
Tēnā rawa te kōrua kei aku rangatia. Yeah, I actually just want to keep on listening. As I said, my interest in Rangitāne was first sparked when I was honoured to compose for Te Wakahuia way back, and I said that there's a verse missing from that pātere. You know, I learned a lot just in that short time I spent with te iwi while I was out at te kaiaotanga, because he rawiki au te whakarongo, he pēnei anō i tēnei rānei, I au e whakarongo ana kia kōrua, e rere ana ngā kōrero. And as we've said to our kia ngai taringa, all our listeners, you know, ka tuku te kahu o te wai, we have a bit of a ruku i roto i ngā kōrero, engari encourages the appetite, I guess, for those of you that are Rangitāne and listening to go home.
And dive deeper.
Dive deeper and finish the business. Sounds a bit mafiosa, that kōrero there.
Yeah, unfinished business.
Yeah, you got unfinished business. So e mihi ake ana te ngākau kia kōrua tahi. E whakakanohi nei i tō kōrua rahi i a Rangitāne. What's the ako moment for you today, Erica?
Heaps. I did not know Rangitāne was that big. Heard heaps of beautiful names of true place names. Oh, I really liked what you said, Peter, about how the fleet people and how it's a common misconception that everyone just assumes that all the Māori people came on the great fleet migration, but really, you know, there was actually all those journeys beforehand that happened to come and suss the areas out first. So, yeah, I really liked that point you made there.
It's interesting, that whole theory has been disproven, but you'll still get those...
Oh, those Facebook trolls.
And there's quite a few of them. I mean, I wouldn't, Hobson's Pledge, that's their history, right, of New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
Koina, that was one of my ako moments, was ngā moenga me Ngāti Māmoe. Ia, me te puhinga o te waka o Huataki. Ana ka ia te ana māhanga.
Whakarotia tēnei, and ko enei ana he māhanga. Koina te takinga mai o te ingoa, ko ngā ana, o anei te kauvra, but ko ngā ana at the bottom, he māhanga. They're the same, he twins.
Cool.
Yeah. I'll be definitely going back to re-listen ki ngā kōrero I te rānei. Any closing kōrero, kei aku rangatira? Te Matahiapo is going like this.
Tāku nai ho he mihi. He nui te mihi kia kōrua Aotearoa ki tēnei kaupapa rangatira tēnei. Mai taku rangatautanga. Mai taku taiahuitanga, mātaki ai au I tēnei whakarongo ake au ki tēnei me te pai hoki o tēnei kaupapa. E aroha nui nei tō mātou iwi mo koutou I whai wahi mai kia mātou. Taku auntie whakapātu ai ahau. I says, mea tu kia, rawe tēnā kaupapa. Whaia. Nā reira, e mihi nui ana I runga I te ngā kauwhakaiti mo kōrua mo koutou. I whakawātea mai I tētahi paku wāhi kia mātou Rangitāne, ki aura anō ai wā mātou nā kōrero. Mate no atu.
Kia ora te Matahiapo. Pete?
Just thanks for having us on and giving us an opportunity to share some things. And to any of the listeners, our Rangitāne whānau who haven't touched base, we're easy to get a hold of. Just Google us up. We've got a number in the phone book, and we're easy to get a hold of via email and those kinds of things. And sign up to the Facebook page. Lots of things are happening. We're doing stuff every week. Kia ora kōrua.
Ka pai.
Tēnā rawatu kōrua. Nō re, e te iwi, anei te waiata wiki, but I'll check over to te Matahiapo, mana te waiata e whakamārama mai ki a tātou.
Kia ora no tātou, ko tēnei waiata, ko Taringa, ko haere mai rā. Hohona. Tēnei waiata, he mea tito nā tātere, he uri no mātou Rangitāne, he maki tānara. Nā tawaro kāwa nā te rangi, tētai honga waiata i whakaputai nei e mātou, tau rua mano te kaumāwaru i tō mātou kōputi waiata. Tuatahi i whakaputaina, ke whakarauora i ngā kōrero i te reo i wainga i a mātou. Ai, he waiata pōhiri, kia pōhiri te tangata, he ngāwari ngā kupu, he tāhua ngā kupu, i roto i te waiata nei, tahi o ngā kōrero, mo tahi o ngā wāhi whakahirahira mō mātou o Rangitāne, ngā tūtohu whenua, o tira he waiata kia pōhiri te tangata, kia tau mai ki roto i a mātou, kia Rangitāne. Nā reira, anei rā e hikama.
Ko Rangitāne te iwi, kura haupo te waka te tapua e au anuku kairumara. Nā wairau o rua te rekai aro, ko rau kaua kaua mō ana kei waho ki mai. Hiha, hiha, piki mai kake mai, haere mai rā. Nau mai rā e ngā iwi, ki a haue, ki te ukaipo o ngā mazua. Ki ngā takahanga a ngā tupuna. Wiki mai, kake mai, haere mai rā. Haere mai rā, e ngā iwi e. Kake mai, haere mai rā. Ki oku whenua, kauri kura. E tini whetuki, te rangi e. Ko Rangitāne, ki te whenua. Wiki mai, kake mai, haere mai rā.
Tēnā koe o tira kei ku rangatira e mihi ana kia kōrua, tēnā rau atu kōrua. And you know, te ahu o te waiata haere mai rā, there you go, e te iwi. Koutou o Rangitāne, tēnā. Kia whakawhanau ngā atu ki a koutou anō, e mihi aki ana.
Cool,
Pai,
thanks,
tēnā
brother.
kōrua.
Kia ora,
Tēnā
hei kona
kōrua.
mai rā.
Hei kona. That was cool, eh? That was our first iwi o te wiki where we've had 2 people.
Yeah, I rawe rawa atu, and it was a cool dynamic having
Yeah.
a rangatai and a pakeke,
Yeah.
but both very knowledgeable and passionate about te iwi Rangitāne I rawe rawa atu.
Yeah. Yeah. That was really cool.
And a cool waiata too, got tātere te kaitito and tawaroa.
Yeah.
Nāna te rangi.
I wonder, can you find their kōputu waiata on Spotify?
It's on SoundCloud.
Oh, okay.
So if you search Rangitāne, Te Rūnanga o Rangitāne o Wairau, you'll be able to find that on SoundCloud, and
SoundCloud, okay.
there's about 14 waiata on there.
Nice.
Yeah. So there you go, e te iwi e mihi ake ana, and as I said, you know, our iwi o te wiki, we open the door, we have a bit of a kōrero, and I feel we do, you know, it's a timo.
Yeah. I feel like iwi o te wiki is really all we're doing is just facilitating a kōrero.
Kia ora.
Yeah.
Oh, ka mahi e te wahine mōhio. I runga I tērā I te iwi e mihi ake ana ki a koutou ngā manaakitanga nui ki runga ki a koutou katoa. O tira, kei wareware au te mihi ake ki te māngai pāho, kōrua ko irirangi te motu. E mihi ana, a taringa ki a koutou anei e whakapāho atu nei raro I ngā manaakitanga a te wānanga o te roa, e te iwi, hei kona mai rā.
Hei kona!
Bit whakaronga, bit kari. Get the rope close, everybody, buddy. Taringa. Yeah, tahuri piri mai ki o whakarongo ki te tangi a te korimako Korero flowing out the hook of force Kaupapa relevant, kaupapa out of bounds Kaupapa exigent, kaupapa paramount Nā ko nā whakapiri mai ki te Kaupapa tino whakahira hira Whakarongo pi kari kari mai Hare hare mai, o Taringa hare hare mai We gotta gather up close everybody Gather up close everybody Kani move that body Kani move that body
Taringa, he mea tuku nā te wānanga o Aotearoa. Nā te māngai pāho me irirangi te motu I tautoko. To listen to more episodes, search for us on your podcast app and subscribe, or follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Taringa, whakarongo mai.